Good. Right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the second day of the fifth meeting of the Open-Ended Working Group on the Post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. My name is David Ainsworth. I'm Head of Communications for the United Nations Secretariat of the Convention on Biological Diversity. I'll be with you for, about half an hour right now and give you a bit of an update of what took place yesterday in the meetings, and then maybe a bit of a sense of where things are going and also anticipating things going forward for COP15 in a few days. Those of you who are following us, I don't think the chat function is yet enabled on Interactio, so if you wish to send me questions, please go to the YouTube link, cbd.int/live, and add questions there, and I can take a look in this area. The other unfortunate thing is there will be no interpretation today. We'll have it just in English, so you can look at the recording later and then run it through interpretation software. My apologies. Yesterday was as you know, the opening of the fifth meeting of the Open-Ended Working Group. We had a plenary in the morning. The plenary was to establish the modalities of moving forward for the meeting, establish the contact groups. And as you know, we established 5 different contact groups. Those of you who followed my briefing yesterday should note that the names I cited there are the names that we have for those contact groups. That's set forward. It's also interesting to note that one major point of discussion in the plenary was what are the texts which will become the basis for moving forward in the negotiations. Just to recall everyone, in fact there were 2 texts that were under discussion. First of all, there's the draft of the framework, the draft of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework that had been discussed through the meetings, through Geneva and through Nairobi, heavily annotated, heavily bracketed. So that's one text. But in addition to that, there's an informal text that is the result of the discussions that took place here in Montreal at the end of September. That discussion at plenary yesterday was which of those texts should be used. The proposal of the co-chairs was that indeed the informal text that came from that meeting should become the basis moving forward. However, without prejudice to any views that were contained in the Nairobi text. There was considerable discussion in plenary. A number of countries supported this, but it was notable that a number of countries were not certain this is how they wanted to proceed. It took a time of discussion, a bit of a break in the session for a few minutes to have a position agreed. And so the final decision was that these 2 texts were to be placed side by side as they move forward in the meeting. That means that delegates were free to refer to the informal text and indeed to the Nairobi text. And they were set on this parallel basis. And so that's all the discussions that we had yesterday were set forward on the basis of that. So what I have to report, summaries I got from my friends. So first of all, I'll talk about contact group number 4, which was co-led by Ann Teller of the EU and Jorge Murillo of Colombia. It met in the afternoon from 4 p.m. till 7:30. They went till just after supper time. In this case, they met. And remember, their mandate was to look at targets 14 through 16 and 17, and then 20 through 22, and any newly proposed targets. So they started with target 17. A lot of discussion on that, but there was no consensus of removal of the brackets. And so with regard to target 17, they'll be moving forward to a co-leads group that's going to be meeting today to look at that. The good news for the day, however, comes from this contact group, is that after considering elements, the group agreed on clean text for targets 20, 21, and 22, which is really quite significant here. So just to remind everybody, those targets are there. Let me just quickly, I'm going to go up so I get the specific text for them. So those targets we're looking at in the framework are looking at questions of the gender program, looking at knowledge, and looking at participation in decision making. So targets 20, 21, and 22 are agreed. Also note that target 12. Now, I should be careful. When I say agreed, it's only agreed at the COP, but that means that these texts are clean. There's a basis for consensus. That's really positive. In the Bureau meeting this morning, the countries said that they were so glad to see that in one day of this working group, they made more progress than they made in the 4 previous meetings of the working groups. That's really positive indeed. So that's excellent. So they're moving forward on that one. And I guess for that group, they'll be looking at that informal Friends of the Chair group to look at target 17. The other group that we've got was target 17, which dealt on biotechnology. This is the Friends of the Chair group that looked at it. They were looking at various proposals. I guess the notion around the terms science-based and the idea of based on the precautionary approach. The notion is that these terms should be retained or possibly deleted ever. So we haven't retrieved on that. The question of the precautionary approach, as you may be aware, that's a principle under the convention that we work on regularly, which is to say that in the event that there is no certainty about outcomes, that indeed that one should assume, I guess you should say, possibly the most possibly risky outcome, and therefore act with the most caution as well. So that group is going to be discussing again moving forward. The other contact group that I can report on is contact group 5, and then also the questions of Freds of the co-leads on DSI. So we're dealing with the DSI issues here. So this is the group that was led by Letitia Chitwamolomoni of South Africa and Mr. Gaute Voigt Hansen of Norway. And so the contact group met for about an hour yesterday in the afternoon and again in the evening. And then the Friends of the Co-Leads went very, very late on that one here. So this is contact 5. Now, the are looking at the question of the work on the digital sequence information as well. And that's moving forward. I'm just looking at the notes here exactly here. Yeah, they didn't make a great deal of progress. They referred to the group of the informal advisory group, informal co-chairs advisory group that discussed this issue, and they looked at a number of elements moving forward. In particular, they're looking at the question of technology transfer as one way to look at dealing with the outcomes of DSI, and then also the need to work through a benefit sharing mechanism where it's a multilateral or a hybrid mechanism with bilateral elements. So remember, under the Nagoya Protocol, the idea is to always look at a variety of mechanisms by which benefits can be shared. And so whether it's a bilateral mechanism that works between users and providers, or whether it's some form of multilateral mechanism that works at a more global level indeed, and looking at this. And so the possibility to say is, can DSI be dealt with in the context of these multilateral mechanisms or indeed other bilateral mechanisms? That has to be continued and looked at in much further detail. We'll be looking at that later on today. And then finally, target 17 on biosafety, biotechnology. We've looked at that one, sorry. And then finally, I'll look at contact group 6 that met. This was the contact group that was led by Carolina Caceres of Canada and Marie-May Jeremy. So this group met indeed in the afternoon, and then again very late in the evening. So they were discussing sections A and B and looked at paragraph by paragraph. So they expressed their views, made proposals. Some square brackets were removed and new ones here. So we have a consensus in paragraph 3 under the first section of the framework, which is interesting as well. Section B, which included a list of the different stakeholders who could be included, is still being under discussion as well. So there's a Friends of the Co-Leads that was established to look at what's going on in the other paragraphs, and that is discussing that seeking to move as well. So they're convening again this morning, and they'll continue discussions today. We do have some new documents that people can look at, and you'll find these documents on the website under the post-2020 Working Group 5 documents. We have a non-paper from Contact Group 5 that deals with the question of digital sequence information genetic resources. So if you look at that, you'll see the latest state of the text on that. We'll also see a non-paper from the result of the first meeting of Contact Group 4. And then finally, there's a non-paper from Contact Group 6, and that looks at the text on sections A through E of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. And those are the first sections that frame the work that we're looking at there. So you'll take a look at, and those discussions will continue. Today is contact groups throughout the whole day. So you'll be looking at those discussions proceeding over the course of the entire day. So sorry, just to remind you that the non-paper I talked about from Contact Group 4, it will have the text of target 17 and then targets 20 through 22. And you'll see that targets 20 through 22 in that are clean text. Sorry, the one thing maybe I should have highlighted, apologies that I didn't look at this, is that there is a proposal for a target, possible target 23 on the One Health approach that's there. And so that's a target that would, the text I have here, which is in brackets, says this target would implement biodiversity inclusive One Health approaches, focusing especially on the risks of the emergence and transmission of zoonotic diseases to avoid or reduce risks to the health of humans, wild and domestic species and ecosystems. So that is a new proposal for a target. Look, that will be discussed over the next little while, because there was no target relating to the One Health approach so far. Over the course of today, the schedule that we've got outlined for us is going to be, hold on just a minute, pardon me. As I said, it's all going to be contact groups today. The first contact groups are going to be meeting at 10 a.m. shortly after I finish my briefing with you today. Let me just take a look at what's set up on our screens here. A contact group on contact group 2 that will look at agenda item 4. So targets 1, 4, 5, and 6 will be discussed this morning in room 230A. Again, that's for only participants of the contact group. Then we'll also have a contact group 6 on agenda item 4. So continuing those discussions from yesterday. Then the next plan is to have those are the ones that we stay moving forward, and those will be Friends of Chair afterwards. So that's all that we're looking at over the course of today, moving forward on it. That's what I've got for you now. I'll turn and see if we've got any questions online. Pardon me. I've got 22 people watching now. Any questions online or any questions from people here in the room? I see a lot of people in the room are experts or veterans, so they already know this process very, very well. They won't have much to ask. Okay, I'll wait for a few minutes and see if there's questions online. Just reminding everybody that tomorrow, the 5th of December, is the last day of the open-ended working group. They are expected to produce some form of a document that they will transmit to the COP for further discussion. As the hope is that we can advance much further on many other discussions or parts of the text. The other thing to remark is that we will have a global youth summit taking place tomorrow. You'll see the information for this on the CBD screens. And I think for you media members, we've admitted a media advisory. I believe it was early this morning about that youth summit. It's going to there. I can confirm that the United Nations Secretary General will arrive in Montreal tomorrow, and indeed is expected that he will be involved in an engagement youth in some way or the other. So letting you know. And again, the big event starts on the 6th of December. So on a Tuesday, the meeting on Tuesday begins with we'll have a press conference here at 9 a.m. featuring the COP15 president, featuring the Minister of Environment of Canada, featuring Elizabeth Maruma, featuring Inger Anderson, who's the Executive Director of UNEP, and they'll be at 9 o'clock. And then the opening ceremonies for the meeting are at 3:15. Please note that time, because I know that a media advisory went out saying it was a different time, but 3:15 p.m. are the opening ceremonies, the ceremonial ceremonies here. Those media who are watching here and who will be coming to set up for cameras will be in touch with you either later today or early Monday morning about times and dates for bringing in any equipment for filming the ceremonies in that case. Note that our host broadcaster, Eurovision, will indeed be providing signals of that opening ceremonies to you, so that'll be available. But if others wish to provide other signals themselves in the room, we'll have to bring equipment in at a sooner time. I don't see any questions online, so I think it'll just be a very short briefing today. So those of you online, please check out. No, I do have a hand in the room. Corinne, I don't have a microphone for you here, unfortunately. Okay, so there will be no closing press conference for this meeting. No, I will do a briefing again tomorrow. Sorry, Corinne's question. We've got the microphone now, but it's okay, Corinne. So the question that Corinne asked was, will there be a closing press conference and when? I will have a press briefing tomorrow morning again, Fred. There won't be a closing conference, but in the opening conference on the 6th, we'll definitely revisit the results. We also expect that there will be a media availability set up somewhere along the line on the morning of the 6th as well, but that'll have to be pending for that. Thanks. Okay, excellent. Thank you very much, everyone. So those of you on site, I invite you to continue to discuss or chat with delegates. If you can find them, they'll be in the different contact group rooms, so it may be a bit of a challenge. And those of you who are following online, we'll see you again tomorrow morning, and my hope is that we'll have more to announce as far as further developments. Thank you very much, everybody. That brings to an end this morning press briefing. Good morning.